how we're positioning the position, for lack of better terms, of being a salesperson who's doing door to door. Why? Think about how many red flag words is what I call them. I just spouted off with that one ad: commission, door to door, sales, right? So
welcome to the Real Construction Owners Podcast. I have a special guest, Becca Switzer, an OG in the roofing industry. How you doing, Becca?
I'm doing great, Justin. Thank you for having me on.
Man, it's a pleasure. You know, when I first started in this roofing sales arena, I was looking for training, and there's a lot of trainers online, but for some reason, I found your stuff. I bought it and I crushed it that season. And the start to my success is because of your training. But before we go any further, I want you to tell our audience a little bit about yourself. What were you doing? How did you get into this field, into this industry? And how did it all get started?
So I was told that as a very young child, I was a natural salesperson. And my parents tell a story where I was like 6 or 7 years old, and apparently I was selling Girl Scout cookies. I guess I was only 5 or 6 years old because I was in Girl Scouts when I lived in Nebraska. So my dad, I guess I went into his office. He was a doctor, and I went into his office, and a bunch of the nurses are like buzzing around. And I was saying, "Hey, I'm selling Girl Scout cookies. This is my favorite. I've got this flavor, this flavor, this flavor. The caramel delights are my favorite. You're going to want at least 4 boxes of those." And then one of the nurses apparently was like, "Oh, honey, I'm sorry." Like, get out of it. She's like, I don't have any money on me today. And I go, "That's okay. We'll take a check." I was 5. I was 6 years old. So, and then I remember I used to hustle just in my neighborhood. I would build, like, my parents were remodeling a room. I took scraps of wood and built little sailboats out of them. And I was going around selling sailboats to the neighbors, picking flowers and selling those. So I've kind of always just been an entrepreneurial spirit, I guess, as a little kid. But when the real stuff started happening, so I went to University of Iowa when I graduated high school. And after my sophomore year, I ended up going home for the summer just to work at my fast food job in the mall, make some money to go back to school. And I had a recruiting letter from Vector Marketing, Cutco Cutlery, on my kitchen table when I went back to my parents' house. And a couple of my friends were there, and they're like, "I think that's a scam. I think my brother did that. It's like selling pots and pans or something to your friends and family." And I'm like, I'm going to check it out regardless.
That's funny. My friends said the same thing to me.
And I ended up that first summer, I sold something like $50,000 or $60,000. So I made almost 30 grand as a 19-year-old kid. And I looked at my summer's earnings. I'm like, I don't know. I'm not going to go back to school. I'm really good at this. Like, I'm good at sales. I don't even know what I'm doing in college. So I'm just going to keep doing this. So I sold Cutco for a couple of years. And then I ended up actually marrying who's my former husband. Now we have recently split, but my former husband was my Cutco manager. We ended up getting recruited by somebody who was at the time, they were the vice president of the second largest storm restoration company in the country. And he, unbeknownst to us, he was going to break off and start his own company. So he was headhunting, obviously, Cutco people, because as you know, Justin, we're very, very well trained. We have systems in place, and we're just really good sales performers. So I ended up moving out to the East Coast and then chasing storms for a few years, and then landing in St. Louis and working there for a couple of years. And throughout that process, just realizing, like, there is no training for this business. And it's a shame, because you can make a ridiculous amount of money in a short amount of time, knowing nothing. In my first 4 months, I only worked April, May, June, July, August. Or no, I'm sorry. It was May through November 1st, but it was 4 months. And I took home like $105,000, I think, in commissions, knowing nothing. And then the next summer, I only worked 8 months, and I made $250,000. Like, so through that process, I'm like, man, somebody needs to write a book, make a class, do something to teach people how to do this. And so that's when I wrote my ebook, Diamonds in the Sky. And then now I have 6 different online training programs that I offer to salespeople, business owners, and supplementers. And that's how we're here today with Roof Sales Mastery. So to make a long story long.
Yeah. Hey, roof sales mastery it really is awesome. It was the first training I ever bought and I geeked out on it. And I became a student of what you were teaching. A storm hit and I went out and sold 3 million bucks in 4 months. And I
That's
made,
amazing.
yeah, I hustled. It was sun up till sundown.
Wow.
Kiss the pregnant wife. I don't know when I'll see you, but I'll see you.
Yeah. I'll be
And
back with the bacon, baby. You just
yeah,
sit
yeah.
tight.
And then the Xactimate training, that was awesome as well. That's helped my supplements increase. But people know who you are. I'm more interested in you as a person. So I want to know what's the best moment that you've ever had in your life, or one of them.
Man, the best moment. Well, when we say best, what do we mean?
Well, it can be like a moment where you just felt like pure joy or like gratitude, or where you knew you were guided, or
Mhm.
it was epic adventure where you were looking out into, snowboarding, or like I can close my eyes and see these moments in my past, and anything like that really reaches out to you.
You know, there are a lot of moments that I have that really are conduits for profound gratitude. I think the times I've gone through really difficult chapters and I take control of my situation during those moments and just kind of surrender to grief. And usually these are going to be things like breakups. I mean, I've been through a divorce and I've been through a couple other breakups in my life. And those are always times that crack me wide open and make me connect with spirit. People might say the universe or God or whatever. And during those times, I find that I'm extremely grateful for the experience of grief because I realize that I have such a large capacity to love. And I find that to be an absolutely beautiful part of the human condition. And during those times, I usually end up going on a solo trip or something like that. And a time that I can remember where I was absolutely elated and literally high for like 2 days. I went to Florida and I've always wanted to swim with wild dolphins. Anybody can go to Mexico and get in a swimming pool with flipper, pay $500 and like go, pet a dolphin, right? But
Right.
I've always really felt a connection to whales and dolphins. And just this spring, actually, I went out to Florida by myself to Sanibel Island. And I took a snorkeling cruise out to North Captiva Island. And the cruise was about to leave. We literally had like 5 minutes left at our lunch break, but I had scarfed my food down and people were saying that there were some dolphins out by shore. And I'm like, I'm going over this. So I sprint over there. And there were these two girls that were on the boat with me, total strangers. And I saw some dolphins probably like, I don't know, 2 football fields out. And I'm like, I have to go out there. So I literally strip down, give these girls like everything, my phone, my purse, my clothes. And I'm like, take a video. And I sprint out into the water and I swim as fast as I can. And I swam right next to wild dolphins. They were like coming up right in front of me. And I'm like, oh my God, I've never been so full of pure joy in my entire life. It was just such a magical experience. And then throughout that entire trip, I just really felt very open. Like little kids were coming up and talking to me out of nowhere all the time. I just felt very open and like light was just really pouring out of me at that time because I was just feeling really grateful to be alive and reflecting on the capacity to love that I feel that I have in my heart. And so those are times that have been absolutely amazing. And for me, I think also during those times in my life, I feel that I'm able to get incredible insights on universal laws and wisdom. And so during those times, I love to write. And I have a book that I've slowly kind of been working on that's more about like it's going to be like Nirvana by Nature is my other Instagram account. And it's a practical guide to spirituality, basically, right? There's a lot of like woo-woo stuff out there. Right. Even Eckhart Tolle is like hard to understand.
Yeah.
And I really like to look at nature because nature shows us so many examples of universal truth about what it means to be alive. And so just gaining lessons from that and reflecting is something that really brings me joy. So that might not be a very straight answer to your question, but that's kind of what comes up for me when you ask.
That's beautiful. You lit up. Like that's what I was hoping for. I wanted to see you light up and share an experience of your life because we all have them and we all have the ability to tap into our highest self or our peak state by reflecting on those amazing moments. And that's what I was trying to bring out of you. So thanks for sharing. Now,
Yay.
as a business owner, guys, if you don't know, she crushes it in the online space. She teaches roofing contractors how to grow their business. She trains the owners and the salespeople how, in all walks of it. I mean, it's helped my business become $5+ million a year, every year for the last several years. And I'm curious as a business owner, because business owners are listening, what are some things that you invest in?
Things that I invest in. Well, one of the best things that I could have done was hire a personal assistant for myself. And it's actually a really good friend of mine, Zane Frings is his name. And I'm somebody who's like a control freak. And so, and I'm still not good at it. Like, honestly, this is one of those, like, do as I say, not as I do things, because even Zane says to me all the time, like, you are underutilizing me, give me more to do. And I become the bottleneck in my business because I have a vision for exactly what I want to do, but it's like, do I feel inspired to do it in this moment, or do I have time to do it in this moment, or is it the prioritized project? So the first thing I would say is definitely like hiring somebody that you trust that can just help you with, whether it's business related or it's just even personal things that allow you to free up more time to do revenue generating activity. That's like the best place that I've invested my money, is honestly in Zane. Because anything that I don't want to do, I can say, dude, can you just figure this out? Like, will you take this course and do this part for me, or talk to this person? And he's like, yeah. So things like, right? Things like that, for sure. My business is interesting because I run just an information product. So my overhead is extremely low, but hiring anybody that can do the thing that is making you the bottleneck to whatever, whether that's more leads that you have or marketing or SEO or whatever, that's going to be the best advice that I can give, because I can tell you from personal experience, I'm the person that's just like, I'll figure it out. Wait, and then 2 years pass and it's like, when are you going to do that webinar, Becca? So that's what I would say, investing in people who are experts in the thing that's causing you to be the bottleneck in your business.
That's a great answer. So I'm going to unpack that a little bit. As a business owner myself, I used to wear all the hats in my construction company, but I could only get to about $2 million in sales. And then one year I decided to hire first a production manager, somebody who would handle all the jobs, deal with the subcontractors, oversee the projects. And then I freed up my time. And then I hired an operations person, somebody to do all the collections, somebody to call the customers. And lastly, using your system and some other systems, I hired a recruiting manager. And that now I'm out of the field. I don't knock doors anymore. I'm in Costa Rica living my dreams. And right now we have like 5 new recruits this week going out to make me some money. So I want you to unpack and share some nuggets of wisdom on recruiting, because that's what every contractor wants. They want to know how they can duplicate themselves, how they can go out and use a system that will enable them to get new sales reps to create revenue for their business.
Right. So recruiting is a place that is most roofing contractors' pain point, because we're hiring for door-to-door commission sales. Like, when you put out an ad that says now hiring door-to-door, commission roof salesman, average income $75,000, $125,000 a year, flexible hours, blah, blah, and then nobody clicks your ad, or you're getting 1 to 2 bites a week. How many of you have had this, right? Like, Justin, you've probably even had this experience back when you were first getting started. Well, the first problem is how we're positioning the position, for lack of better terms, of being a salesperson who's doing door-to-door. Why? Think about how many red flag words, is what I call them, I just spouted off with that one ad. Commission, door-to-door, sales, right? So the first thing is you have to think about who your audience is. Most people are what? They're a product of the beaten path in life. They go to high school, they get a degree, they go to college for 4 to 6 years and get a degree in they get their diploma in high school, they get their degree in college in something like psychology or philosophy. Then they leave and they go get some corporate job and work there until they're 65 or die, or they end up going and managing a restaurant or something like that because the job market is tough with their degree in their back pocket. They get married, they get the white picket fence, the 2.5 kids, the golden doodle, and then they retire or die. That's
Right.
what everybody does.
That's the truth.
Right?
Yep.
So most people, as a product of that, are looking at 9 to 5s. They live the 9 to 5 life. That's secure, stable. It's a salary paycheck. They can count on it. Now, people like you and I, and almost every single person that's listening to this podcast is not that type of a thinker, or we wouldn't be here right now. But you have to understand that your audience is, by and large, the average American person. Therefore, how do we change the way that we position our ad and the position that we're hiring for so that more of those people are interested? Because here's the thing, just because that's their mindset doesn't mean they're not capable of doing that job, but we're never going to catch them if we're scaring them away with the verbiage in our ad. So the first thing that I always talk about is the ad itself is incredibly critical, and it's only one tiny piece of this entire hiring process. Correct. But that's the first point of contact. People are not going to pick up the phone or send you an email or fill out that application on Indeed if they're not interested in the ad. So I always talk about there's two extremes that most people do with their ad. One extreme is way too direct and honest, which is now hiring door-to-door commission sales, right? Mm-hmm. Nobody's going to click that ad. And the people that do click it, the one or two, are usually the people that show up and they're like already selling roofs somewhere. And they say, well, my last company owes me 30 grand and I just need gas money to get started. And you're like, okay, yeah. Right? That's probably not going to work. Now, on the other end of the extreme spectrum of ad verbiage, you have too vague. So that might be like, now hiring, job, starting pay 75 to 125,000, flexible hours, entry level positions, welcome. And people will be like, I don't really know what that is. And you'll get a lot of applicants because it sounds like a regular job. But when they show up to your office for the interview, they realize it's a door-to-door sales position. They feel like you bamboozled them and they're not going to show up to training. So that doesn't work either, right? So I laugh when I say this because it's a true story. One of my clients, Joe Salagi, he worked up in Troy, Michigan. And this was way back like 2015 when the first 2 years of launching your Sales Mastery, really like getting it off the ground. And so many business owners were saying, we need a better hiring system. Can you build it? And I'm like, okay, sure. So I was looking at what Cutco did. And then I was working with a couple of my clients to be like, what are you guys actually doing? Because it's obviously not working. So I want to see what you guys are using and then change it. And I remember I did some calls with Joe because we ended up being like really good friends. And we kind of together wrote out an ad one day. And what it functioned to do was it landed right in the sweet spot. So we hinted that it's a sales type position, right? But we didn't scare them with the door-to-door commission like lingo. We also aren't making it sound like it's a regular clock in, clock out 9 to 5. So I wish that I could tell you that I slaved over this ad and wrote it a bunch of different times and had to experiment. I didn't. I wrote it once. I gave it to my beta crew, which was like 8 to 10 contractors. And I said, please just follow this exactly how I wrote it. Tell me how it works. People were getting anywhere from 50 to 100 applicants on that ad in the first week. And I was like, we've done enough. I'm like, let's sell it. Yeah. Like, okay, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So from there, I actually took the Cutco script for the interview and I went through and I turned it into like a roofing model. So I modeled it after how Vector does it, but I changed all the lingo because the interview is the next thing. And I know I'm getting a little long-winded on this, Justin.
No, it's perfect because I do your process. And if you don't know what she's talking about, it is fire. So you have a whole system. You have day 1 and day 2 training where your sales manager just reads it right off a pamphlet. Or a book, and then your salespeople have like steps they have to obtain to be successful. So go on. You're welcome to go on.
Great. So we get people with this ad, right? We get a bunch of people to apply. Well, hearing the numbers that most people have never heard of numbers like that. In Cutco, Justin, you saw, we would have 10 or 15, 20 people in training every single week because we ran big ass interviews every day, right? Yep. So every week we had these big training classes and we'd launch them and we keep running interviews. Well, the reason that it worked like that, and most people in this industry especially, they're like 50 applicants. They can't even wrap their head around that because they're used to getting 1 or 2 nibbles on their monster ad, right? So the first problem that I eliminated was time wasting, because what happened with recruiting was this. Let's say that in the past you had 2 people apply. Well, you'd probably set up 2 individual interviews. That'd take about 2 hours out of your week. No big deal. But even then, half of them wouldn't show up. So that's fine when it's 2 people. You might be pissed, but you're like, oh, well, I'm just going to go and get some paperwork done. But if you have, let's just say 50 people applied and you scheduled 35 of them for interviews, you're not going to want to do 35 individual interviews. That's your new full-time job. That's crazy.
Yeah, have a group
Right?
interview.
Exactly. So I show people how to do a group interview, because even then, if only half the people show up, cool, we've got 17 people in this group interview. And maybe you split it up into 2 groups. Like, you're not going to want to make them probably bigger than 10 people. But so now we've got this group interview process, and the interview is scripted as well, because what I found was contractors innocently but accidentally oversell the position almost every single time. You're telling the truth when you tell people that I made $250,000 in 8 months, right? I bought my Jeep Grand Cherokee in cash in July because I made so much money. You're telling the truth, but remember, back up. It's the average white picket fence mortgage person, right? Who has never seen more than $50,000 a year before taxes at their 9-to-5 corporate job. So when you tell them and you're shaking $20,000 commission checks in their face, they're like, this is boiler room. That person is Ben Affleck. I need to get out of here. This is too good to be true. Right?
Right.
So the interview, again, I scripted the whole thing. I can't go into what the interview says, but I've scripted the whole thing. So people are really chomping at the bit. So then you get these big batches of recruits, the long and the short of it. They're really excited to do the job. We've explained to them how we do in the interview script is we explain like commissions and door-to-door canvassing in a way that doesn't scare them. It's just like, oh, like we just explain it in a different way that makes sense to them. They're like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Like, why wouldn't we do it that way? And then we push them into a 5-day training. So it's a classroom style training that you've got day 1, day 2, day 3, follow-up training 1, follow-up training 2. And the entire thing takes maybe 17 hours total over the course of 5 days. So it's not even really that big of a deal. And Justin, you can attest to that because you've run it.
Yep.
Right.
I actually modified yours down to 2 days, and then I make their fast start. I love the fast start thing you have in your course, because that gets people like, hey, I want to win prize 1, prize 2, prize 3, prize 4.
Yes, absolutely. And so I wanted to copy something like that. The other thing that was really critical, and I don't even really talk about in videos, but I probably should more, is the practice inspections, right?
Yes.
Even if people are storm chasing, most of the time they're hiring people in that market. Like they're going to a set and they're putting out an ad, they're hiring people.
Right. They're hiring people in the storm area.
Correct. Exactly.
Who have networks.
Exactly. They know people, right? They know people from their neighborhood, other jobs, school, like parents and sports teams, right? Church, whatever, friends, family, things like that. So what we do is they're doing these practice inspections that they get paid for. And we're not going to go into all my bits and pieces here because that's proprietary information. Right. But we have that compensation structure built in, right? That's very clever. And so they're going out and they're doing these practice inspections with people that they already know, getting comfortable. There's no pressure. And when they find damage, because we're making it a qualified inspection, right? We're making sure Aunt Betty lives in the neighborhood that we know has hail. So when Joey goes and does Aunt Betty's roof just for practice and he finds damage and he's excited and he comes down and he goes over the sales presentation with her, she's gonna sign, she's gonna get her roof looked at, and he's gonna be the one to do it for his brand new job, right?
Exactly.
So there's just a ton. I mean, it's such a beautifully complex but comprehensive system. It really makes it truly repeatable. That's why I called it the recruiting machine, because it's like now you can just turn it on. You run the ad, people apply, you do the group interviews, you get a big batch of recruits, you push them into training, you put them through classroom training, and then you launch them. And then you can do that as aggressively, like in Cutco, we did it every week, every single week. It works.
It really does work. And I'll be the first to admit, guys, if you're a roofing contractor, if you're a construction owner, this is applicable to you. In the last 4 months, I use this and I also modified it with somebody else's, and we've generated just shy of $1 million with less than 5 representatives that came through this process. Another
Five
older
rep-
guy, 5 representatives, right under $1 million in business. And we also had one of the guys who we recruited in the Storm area. He's an older man. He had an irrigation business, but he was wanting to learn something new. And he went out and sold roofs to all his friends. So it really works.
Exactly.
I can't, what she's saying, kudos to you for creating this. Now, let's change it up a little bit. I want to know, what would you say to our owners? What would you say is your best success secret to growing a contracting company or their business?
For them, a tip for them.
Yep.
So the first thing is just keeping things really simple. Like, I think that people get too caught up in and I don't want people to misunderstand me, but they get too caught up in the branding and the looking like a roofing company before they are doing revenue generating activity. So what I mean by that is, I've seen a lot of companies when they're trying to get off the ground, the first thing they do is they pour ridiculous amounts of money. I mean, we're talking tens of thousands of dollars a month in truck wraps, door hangers, business cards, radio ads, things like that, SEO. And those things are important. I'm not saying that they're not, but the first thing that you need to be doing is just getting feet on the ground in the neighborhood. Because once you have roofs going on and you have a sales team that's being productive, you're going to spread. There's going to be signs in everybody's yards. You're going to be getting referrals and things like that. And from that revenue, now we can start putting that back into the business to do things like wrapping our trucks, getting radio ads. But I watch so many companies go into debt in the beginning, just trying to look like a roofing company, a successful roofing company, instead of just getting signs in yards because you got contracts signed. So that's definitely one of the things. The other thing I would say is investing heavily in training your sales team to be good salespeople. That's crazy to me. Like, I truly get bamboozled and flabbergasted are the only two weird words I could think of. Meanwhile, their sales team, they just hire salespeople and then they're like, okay, if you want to make money, you're going to figure it out.
Yeah,
they just
get in my truck. Get in my truck and follow me for a few days and you'll figure it out.
That's literally what the guy that hired me said. He's like, this guy's name is Chris. It was Chris Sarles was his name. Nice guy, had been doing it for maybe like 1 or 2 years. And he's like, just listen to Chris, knock doors, and then here's a stack of contracts. Just his advice was knock 100 doors a day. If you do that, you're going to get it. It's a numbers game. And I'm like, no. I'm like, I'm like, I shouldn't have to knock 100 doors to sell every day. That's crazy. I should have to knock like 20 doors a day. But all that to say, it's nuts to me.
I want you to summarize it by saying the top 2 to 3 areas an owner should be focusing on.
Okay, summarize. Investing in legitimate formal sales training for your team. Investing in filling in roles within your office infrastructure that you can delegate to so that you're not wearing 15 hats, because there's a very rapid ceiling approaching for diminishing returns. And then again, focusing on revenue generating activity before blowing tons of money on basically papers and ads and things like that. Those are my top 3.
Dropping bombs right here. Listen closely, guys. If you want to get to 8 figures, what you just said is the truth. So let's dive into something a little bit different. I'm curious, what's an investment that you've made that has surprised you besides the person that you hired? Like we talk about cryptocurrency, we talk about real estate, we talk about international business or international real estate. What do you invest in?
Lots of Bitcoin. And I'm not going to say how much because that's for me to know.
Yeah.
But I actually have my former husband, I have to thank for pulling the trigger on that. We have a friend who's like a huge crypto guy, and way back in like 2016 or something, I had earned a ton of money with my business because I'd launched Roof Sales Mastery and it took off right away. And we're like, oh my God, we have like a ton of money sitting here. What do we do with it? And our friend is like, just full send, like put it into Bitcoin. And we did. And I will just say that it has paid off dramatically. And that's really my retirement plan. I'm hoping that within the next, I wish that I had pulled the trigger on cashing out some of it when it was at its recent all-time high of like 67,000. We're gonna just wait for it to get back up to those higher numbers. But I'm a hodler. I'm a hodler.
Same here. I'll hold for life. I'll hold for life. I went to Thailand right from the beginning of this whole Bitcoin thing. An ex-Cutco guy who made over $300 million by creating his own IPO, his own coin. And I said, dude, whatever I need to do, I'll massage your feet. Like, I will clean your house. Like, teach me about this. And he flew me out to Thailand. We stayed for 4 months and I learned a ton about it. And that's when I saw how big this is going to be. And I'm the same. I'm invested in that. So I'm curious as far as the last book that you've read from cover to cover that you really enjoyed.
So the most recent book I've read, or the last one that really stands out that I've read?
Really stands out.
Let's see. Well, actually, so this is unbusiness related, but I guess I'm going to give you two actually, because I'm going to glance over at my bookcase. The one that I've most recently read for the second time, which has really changed my life, is actually Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus.
Okay.
And it's actually about personal relationships, understand each other. The way that the book is written is actually really brilliant because naturally due to communicate or to show love are the exact opposite that men typically do. And so it's great it's meant to be about romantic relationships, of course, but it's interesting taking the lessons from here. I apply them even to just working with clients and even like my assistant, and knowing that, for example, men don't like unsolicited advice. They feel criticized right away, whereas women, we feel like we feel very loved if another woman gives us advice, right? We're like,
I'll figure this out.
Right. So unless they ask, which actually puts me in a really great position with what I do for work, because men, if they're coming to, I don't have to go after men and tell them what to do in their business or as a salesperson, but they come to me to ask. So I think I'm so used to having my advice asked for that in non-business relationships, it just comes out naturally, but that's a damaging thing, right? Like if I do that to my boyfriend, for example, he's not going to like that, but I'm so used to people in business wanting to hear what I have to say and giving my advice. So this book has been really great for me. I really like that. One that I'm going to say, though, that is one of my all-time favorites is The Game of Life and How to Play It by Florence Scovel Shinn. Have you ever read it?
No, I'm going to put that down.
You have to read it. It's really small, actually. It's a small little book. I don't even know how many pages, but you'd have it done in a couple of days. It's all about law of attraction. And she writes it slightly in like a religious context, a little bit. But it's so good. It's just about really, I'm sure you're familiar with law of attraction.
Oh, for sure. I wrote the best-selling book, Visions to the Top, A Millionaire's Secret Formula to Meditation and Visualization. So I'm all about law of attraction.
Love that. So Florence Scovel Shinn writes in kind of an old-fashioned way about law of attraction and just expect. She talks about almost like casting spells, which it's not like witchy sounding. And I'll share a personal story. One of the things that she has in there is she would say like, I get checks in the mail. I just get checks in the mail. And to me, I remember when I read that was one of the things that I had more resistance to, because I was like, okay, I can get behind all this other stuff. Why are checks randomly going to come to me in the mail? And I noticed my own hesitation to like accept that one. So I said, you know what? I'm going to practice that this week. And I remember specifically, I was in my backyard in my other house where I used to live in Gypsum, Colorado. And I was sitting on a lawn chair, tanning, reading it. And I just was like, okay, I'm just going to practice that one. I get checks in the mail. I was like, sure. And I visualized like opening up checks that week, Justin. I don't remember if it was like 2 or 3 or 4 days or something. I went to my mailbox at the post office and I had a letter from Contractors Cloud. I can't remember the guy's name right now. For some reason, I'm blanking on it, but Contractors Cloud had sent me something and I opened it and it was a check for $1,000. And I was like, why? And he just sent it to me because we didn't have any formal affiliate or anything like that, but I had been basically pushing Contractors Cloud because he had showed me the software, and I was making suggestions to people, and I sent out an email, and it was just a thank you. And I'm like, okay. And then the next week I got another check for I don't know what it was, $250 or $280 or something like that from Gap. And I don't know what that was for. I had a credit card with them, but they're just like, here's money. And I'm like, okay. So I'm like, oh my gosh, like you literally can just ask for things and they will appear. And so going through that book was really great for me. Another one like that is called Law of Attraction by Esther Hicks. If you listen to Abraham Hicks on YouTube,
Yep.
That's been a really good one too. So those are the two that I would say right now. Of course, I have a ton of books that I love, but those are two that have been impactful recently and previously in my life.
I'm definitely going to have to get the second one you mentioned by, what was the name of that again?
The Game of Life and How to Play It by Florence Scovel Shinn.
Perfect. I am a super proponent of the law of attraction. And with that being said, we're going to have to do some collaborations together for
my winning government contracts training.
as well as real construction owner solar. Your network, they're probably chomping at the bit to figure out how to win government contracts, or possibly even chomping at the bit, wanting to know how to get into the solar game because the commissions are huge. So let's connect later about that. But Becca, this has been so much fun. I know we have a special offer for our listeners. We'll put the link in the section below where they'll get a discount towards your course. It's probably going to be something like Roof Sales Mastery /RCO. And do you know that special offer off the top of your head, what they're going to get if they go through that link?
Well, I can do a 10% off promo code. So they'll be able to use a promo code there and get 10% off my program.
Awesome. Hey guys, seriously, if you're a construction owner and you're looking to grow your business, you're looking for processes on how to recruit people, you're looking for processes on how to find an operation manager, a recruiting manager, or a production manager. It's got what you need. Becca, this has been so much fun. Thanks for hopping on the call today.
Absolutely. Thank you. Have a great day. Thank you guys for listening.